This week, our Houston Texans take on the 4-6-1 Cleveland Browns. Now, before we get into these matchups, there is a few things I kind of have to discuss. The first thing is the importance of this game. 9-3 versus 8-4, and I feel like I've been saying this for the past probably like 3-4 weeks maybe, but it's true. It's very important. The Steelers lost last week, meaning at the moment the Texans have the number 3 seed, and with some help down the line the Texans could get a first round bye. So it's important for the Texans to keep on winning, not only because of that, but if you beat Cleveland this week, you're still 2.5 games ahead of the Colts. You play the Colts the following week, and if you beat them, you're the AFC South champions. So it's very important for this game to be won by the Texans, and it's also very important for the Texans not to overlook these Cleveland Browns, because these Cleveland Browns, they aren't the same old Browns. Now, if Hugh Jackson wouldn't have gotten fired, it would have been an easy win, because Hugh Jackson is probably the worst coach in NFL history. But unfortunately for us, Hugh Jackson got fired like 4 weeks ago, and the Cleveland Browns are 2-1 since he got fired. So it's a different Cleveland Browns team, and it's important not to overlook them. Now, let's get into these matchups. Let's start off with the Browns offense versus the Texans defense. The Browns on offense average 23 points per game, which is 18th in the league, so kind of middle of the pack. And the Texans defense allows 20.2 points per game, which is 5th in the league, so top 5. The Browns running game averages 128.7 yards per game, and the Texans run defense allows 96.8 yards per game on the ground, which is 7th in the league. So I think this matchup is going to play out in the Texans' favor. The Browns, in my opinion, haven't really played any teams with a run defense quite as dominant as the Texans, and for me this kind of sucks a bit, because I have Chubb on my fantasy team, and I think I'm gonna have to bench him. I don't think Chubb's gonna be able to get anything going, and I think he's a great young player. I think he's gonna be really good for years to come. I actually mocked him to the Texans in my mock drafts back in the offseason, so I'm really familiar with Chubb. He's a really good player, and I believe the Texans will shut the Browns' run game down. Now, for the Browns passing attack, they average 225.5 yards per game, which is 23rd in the league, and the Texans allow 236.8 yards per game, which is 11th in the league. Honestly, guys, Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, is the best quarterback we've played all season since week 4 when we played versus Andrew Luck. I really 100% stand behind that. I think the kid is special. I think Cleveland has something special going. And to me, my biggest concern with Baker Mayfield when he went to the Browns was, okay, Baker Mayfield will be special, but as long as Hugh Jackson is there, Baker Mayfield won't do anything, and depending on how long Hugh Jackson stays there, it could ruin his career. But lucky for Baker Mayfield, Hugh Jackson is gone, so now he can ball out. And honestly, it's scary, man. Baker Mayfield isn't like Mariota. He's not a check down king. He don't care. He'll let that ball rip. So the Texans better be careful. Those big plays they allowed against Tennessee, you can't have that happening, because the Browns have some playmakers, man. They have Jarvis Landry, Callaway. They got David Njoku, who I was really high on. I think it was a couple years ago in the draft. They have, of course, Nick Chubb, Duke Johnson. These guys are low-key kind of stacked on offense, man. So Texans better be careful with the big plays. Now for their pass protection versus our pass rush. The Browns have allowed 35 sacks on the season, and the Texans have gotten 34 sacks on the season. The way I see this matchup playing out is, I think the Texans will get after Baker Mayfield. I really do think so. I think Baker Mayfield's going to take a lot of hits. A lot of them. So I do see the Texans kind of winning this matchup up front in the trenches by stopping the run game and hitting Baker Mayfield a lot. Now let's switch on over to the Texans offense versus the Browns defense. Now the Texans on offense average 24.8 points per game, which is 14th in the league, so middle of the pack. The Browns allow an average of 25.7 points per game, which is 23rd in the league. So kind of towards the back end, but still kind of in the middle, I guess you could say. Running attack, the Texans average 136.5 yards per game, which is 4th in the league. And the Browns allow 131.8 yards per game on the ground, which is 28th in the league. The way I see this matchup playing out is, I think the Texans will have a lot of success running the ball on this Browns team. We saw it last week versus Tennessee. We saw it the week before versus the Redskins. We saw it against Miami. We saw it against Jacksonville. The only game out of these last 5 games where our run game hasn't gotten going was against the Broncos. So the Texans have had success running the ball as of late, if you ask me. And I think against the Browns this Sunday, I think they'll have success again. I think Lamar Miller will bust out with some huge runs again. I mean, not a 97-yard touchdown run, obviously, but I think he'll have a lot of success. Now for the Texans passing offense versus the Browns pass defense. The Texans average 236.5 yards per game through the air, which is 19th in the league. The Browns allow an average of 283.5 yards per game through the air, which is 29th in the league, which isn't good. The way I see this matchup playing out is, I think the Texans will have success through the air when they need it. And I say when they need it because in recent weeks, O'Brien has kind of been protecting Deshaun Watson because obviously the Cowboys game, he got injured. He was playing recklessly, so it's kind of obvious O'Brien is kind of holding him back a bit so he doesn't go out there and play recklessly and hurt himself, because at the end of the day, Deshaun Watson is the franchise, so it's important to protect him. But I do think when the Texans do choose to pass the ball, opportunities will be there, and I think they can easily take advantage of them. Now, I know statistically the Browns defense doesn't sound good, but there's a team that has a plus 14 turnover differential. These guys, they force turnovers, so the Texans better be careful. And just because statistically they're not good doesn't mean they're not talented. They have Myles Garrett, Emmanuel Ogbah, who I'm really high on. They got Jabril Peppers, Denzel Ward, who they just drafted. So they got some talented young players on that defense, and it's important for the Texans to not overlook this Browns team, because this Browns team, if they catch you sleeping, they will punch you in the mouth. They're not the Hugh Jackson Browns. They're a different Browns team. Now, to me, the matchup to watch is going to be the rookie Denzel Ward. He's in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year, in my opinion, or at least he should be in the running for it, versus DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, we already know, he's the best wide receiver in the league. How will this young rookie play against the top wide receiver in the league? Now, for my keys to the game. These are pretty important, because if the Texans are caught sleeping, they can lose this game. They can. Number 1, don't turn the ball over. I feel like I say this every week, but it's true. Every now and then, Deshaun Watson has these games, like against the Redskins, against the Bills, where he just turns the ball over a lot. We can't afford that, man. Not where we're at right now. We're 8-3. We legitimately have a shot at a first round bye, so Deshaun cannot turn the ball over. The next key to the game: rattle and confuse Baker Mayfield. The guys up front have to do their jobs. Romeo Crennel has to call a good game plan to confuse Baker Mayfield, to rattle him early on so he starts forcing bad throws and the Texans get turnovers and stops. And the last key to the game, I think this one's kind of really important: control the clock. Control the clock. What I mean by that is 8-minute long touchdown drives, running the ball constantly down their throat, because honestly, this is a game that the Texans have to win. This is a game that the Texans have no business losing. This is a game where I want the Texans to get in there and get out immediately. There's no time to be doing all this other stuff. There's no time to have a hard-fought defensive battle. There's no time to have a shootout, because this game could turn out to be a shootout if we let it. So I think the Texans just need to go in there, take care of their business, and walk out of this game healthy. Now, my prediction for the game: 31-28, the Cleveland Browns win. Now, I don't know, after seeing the secondary allow big plays to Marcus Mariota, I'm not sure if this defense is ready to contain Baker Mayfield and all his weapons. Corey Davis, he's not that good, and he kept beating J-Joe. Imagine a Jarvis Landry, imagine Callaway, Devin Njoku. I mean, these guys have weapons for days. I think the Texans get into a shootout, and they end up losing this game. They turn the ball over a couple times, and they get upset by the Cleveland Browns, unfortunately. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.